All right, we have a little something new, a little something old, as you see familiar faces around me right now. All right, lower box, you see the one and only James Neveau. All right, you know where you can still check him out. All right, still getting it done where he's getting it done. Brought me into Big Ten country, him and Claire Fipley and Tony Gill. So shout out to both of them. And we're going to tell you the name of this, but we're going to still talk some Big Ten sports in this little podcast we have. The name of it is 3 Men in a Pod. Shout out to Claire Fipley. She's running this. She's holding it down. She's boss mom. You know that guy right there, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Cantankerous, smart ass, funny as you know what, all right? The funster, all right? If you want some jokes, he has some jokes. That's Jock Schrock, Mr. Football, Mr. Insider, always holding us down, coming from the East Coast, and I am Kenneth Davis. I'm out here free falling as we bring you 3 Men and a Pod. Our sports show is going to be dedicated to almost all things sports, but of course we're going to harp on NFL football. Bears, since if we're not located in Chicago, we either reported on the Bears, and it's one of our favorite teams. So nationally, we will touch on national topics, but we're also going to feature some Bear stuff because it's either it's near and dear to our hearts, or with some people, it grinds their gears. So if it's going to grind Josh's gear, we may as well bring the Bears up while we're going along and doing this. We're going to talk about some hoops. We love, women's basketball. If you haven't paid attention,
That's right.
And as I said, James, we're going to do, of course, college sports. Listen, there's two conferences. Let's just be honest. It's the Big Ten and the SEC, and we're going to sit there and talk a lot about both of them. Gentlemen, before we jump into tonight's NFL draft, how are you both doing? It's been a minute since I've seen both of your faces.
Good. Go first, Josh. You're the cantankerous one. I don't want to get off on the wrong foot with you, man.
No cantankerous here. It's awesome to see you guys again. It's been a while. I'm excited to do this. I love you both a lot. We have a ton of fun. Just we've been texting back and forth since we parted ways. It always makes me smile and laugh, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Just because James has great opinions, and we tolerate Ken.
I appreciate that you said that, because I feel like that's one of the things we're going to have to do on this show is just to swallow some uncomfortable truths, and that is that Ken and his takes are just, a little.
It's rancid stuff. It's rancid stuff. It is, but it's fine. We'll get through it. Everyone. We're just going to link arms, sing Kumbaya, and get going.
He's trying really hard not to yell at both of us right now. I can see it in his eye. That is not true. The least likely guy in the world to yell at anybody, and that's honestly one of many reasons why I would want to work on a project with you guys. You're both, really awesome dudes. Like you said, Josh, love talking sports with you guys in the group chat, and bringing those types of things to this forum, I think, is absolutely awesome. I'm really looking forward to doing it. So, Ken, all love to you, man. Really miss doing Big Ten country with you, and just looking forward to doing this, man.
Man, we would have had a year this year doing the Big Ten, but we're still going to do Big Ten, so we're not going to sit on that. Before we jump into the draft, because that's all we're talking about tonight, we do want to say something. Of course, we know that Steve McMichael lost his battle to ALS, the Hall of Famer. He deserved to get in the Hall of Fame. He finally got in there. All of us, Josh, Claire, James, and myself, want to send a shout out to his family, his wife, Misty, all the Bears fans from Mongo. In the hard-fought battle, that's a lot to go through just in general. So we want to send our well wishes as he transitions on to the next level. So we just want to say that before we jump into the draft and get into something maybe a little bit happier, depending on who you wanted, your team to pick, particularly the Bears. So let's start off right now to where, of course, we all knew Cam Ward was going to go number 1 to the Titans. All right. Yeah. He was the sure shot quarterback in this draft. I think the question was going to be, wasn't when Travis Hunter was going to go number 2, but we didn't know where he was going to go number 2. So you had the Jacksonville Jaguars jumping up from number 5, making a trade with the Cleveland Browns, who were going to Cleveland Brown, to go ahead and to get the two-way star from Colorado, the Colorado Buffaloes, and Travis Hunter. We all know he could be drafted as a wide receiver or as a defensive back or cornerback. You're talking about Trevor Lawrence getting a receiver, and that team in Jacksonville that also needed a DB probably going to spend a significant amount of time on the defensive backfield and sprinkle him. I don't think it'll be sprinkled for us that maybe grew up watching Charles Woodson play, or even Deion Sanders play a little bit of offense from a cornerback, where they were out there sometimes. I think he's going to be out there even more than those gentlemen were. But I wonder, and I guess that's a question for both of you. How often, where do you think Travis Hunter will be used the majority of the time? And how often do you expect to see him on the other side of the ball?
Yeah, no, I think at least initially the signs are the Jags are just going to go full steam ahead and let him play both sides as much as he can. Early indicators are he's going to come in rookie minicamp, full slate at wide receiver and as much DB as he can handle. I really love this pick. I think, Ken, we were talking earlier, it's a draft, in my opinion, with 3 elite players and a big drop off after that. Some really good players, but 3 elite guys: Hunter, Abdul Carter, and Ashton Genty. And Travis Hunter is, we use generational a lot now. Like every year there's generational, and that's ridiculous. But Travis Hunter is an incredible football player. The Cleveland Browns, and it's absolute. I'm sorry. There's absolutely no shade to Mason Graham. I think really good football player. Really good football player. Loved watching him play. I could not imagine being a Browns fan and you've just been sitting there and you're like, man, we're going to get Travis Hunter. It's not all that bad. Yeah, we got Deshaun Watson. We got the massage boy. His ankle's up. His Achilles is in tatters. It kind of stinks, but we're going to get Travis Hunter. And you traded down to 5 and you just got Mason Graham. Man, I don't know. That's rough, man. Shout out to was it James Gladstone, the Jags' new GM? Looks like he's 14. Hell of a trade. Travis Hunter is an awesome player. Win for the Jags. No idea what the Browns are doing, but that goes back 20 years now.
Yeah, that's very fair. And I think that the big thing that I love that you echoed the part of that about the trade itself, which is you have to take those types of home run swings when you can get the opportunity. When they put the ball down the plate like that, you have to be able to hit that out of the park. And the Jaguars did that. And I think that a guy like Travis Hunter, you said, like potential, franchise player level guy, could be an elite player at cornerback, could be just an incredible wide receiver. I definitely think that you drafted him to play both positions. I think that it's probably harder to find an elite corner than it would be an elite wide receiver. I think you want to try to get him playing wide receiver as much as you can to make sure that you really develop all of the aspects of his game in that particular area. I really hope that it's one of those situations where I kind of view it almost like Shohei Ohtani, and I'm not like saying that from an expectation perspective, but merely it would be really cool to see it work out the way that it's designed and to have him be able to thrive in both of those areas, both as a corner and as a wide receiver. And I'm rooting for that to happen. And I just want to, again, praise the Jags for going out, making that happen. And I think that as long as you handle that right, it has the potential to be one of the absolute best stories in the NFL. Can't say enough good things about the Jags going and getting that done.
And you're talking about the Jags. You're talking about a franchise that, talking about a franchise that kind of struggles to get talent like that in free agency, right? Are they going to get a guy like Travis Hunter? They're not luring him to Duval. That just doesn't happen. So when you can go and have a chance to get a guy like that who never comes around, who you're not going to be able to sign, you just have to do it. And I think it could really be a quick turnaround for that franchise that's kind of stumbled. It's going to depend on Trevor Lawrence, obviously, but I think Travis Hunter is going to be a star.
Real quick, when James mentioned Shohei Ohtani, I remember a former partner of mine, we got into a debate about Shohei when he was coming to the MLB. And my point to him, because he was basically like, it was useless trying to have him pitch and hit. And what I said to him was, chances are, if you listen to the hype, he's either going to be excellent on one or the other if he fails at the other, or if they shut him down. So it makes sense to just go ahead and let him try, because talent-wise, where you look at his ceiling, and I'm applying that to Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter's ceiling is so high on the offensive side. We've never seen a cornerback with this skill level be able to play the wide receiver naturally in the manner with the catch radius, the tenacious catch radius that he, like, usually a lot of times the joke growing up is you're a DB because you can't catch. When you look at how, and of course we know great cornerbacks can catch, But when you look at how he snatches and attaches the ball, and it's not just from a defensive back aspect, it's from like a greedy receiver aspect. So you see why the Jags went up and got him. The Browns received, of course, the 5th pick, the 4th round pick, number 36, the 126th pick, and a 2026 first round pick. Thoughts, one, on what the Browns got, but this is a problem that I have for both of you. All right. So for me, and then correct me, James and Josh, right? If I'm the Browns, and again, the fact that the Browns received the first round pick next year is great because you still don't know what the Jaguars may be in the future. You could still have a top 5 pick next year because of what could happen to the Jags. So when you look at that, props, because you only went down 3 spots basically to get to be able to bring that in. But when you look at the fact that what they went through with Myles Garrett asking for a trade, then accepting a ransom, right? And then you bring in a defensive tackle who's a good defensive tackle. No one is looking at him as with Graham as, this is going to be Aaron Donald. And I guess when Aaron Donald came into the NFL, we didn't know he was going to be the greatest defensive tackle ever. You know what I'm saying? But still, there isn't that type of hype. And my thought would be, and everything you both just said about Travis Hunter, one, and the Browns have been good at defensive back, but you could have had a player like Travis Hunter who can be a wide receiver on the side. But the flip side is you could have had Abdul Carter. Now, I know some people would say, all right, having 2 bookends, perhaps you want to have that DT, one, because the shortest pathway is a straight line to go along with Myles Garrett. But I would combat that with this. I can have 2 studs on one end, and I also don't know. Myles Garrett did get paid, but Myles Garrett may want to leave the year after next too. And I have to go through that situation. And I can have what looks like in this draft, and Josh said it, this was a 3-player draft. What looks like I could have the best lineman in this draft that's a record in Abdul Carter. So regardless of what happened, I could still have an A+ player that's right there getting to the quarterback rather than going with the player that's more of a B+ player at DT and getting the pick. So thoughts on what the Browns did with what they got with the pick with Graham, but also how do you feel about how they fared with the picks that they got back?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, the first round pick is nice just because it's a dice roll. I mean, in the NFL, you just don't know. I mean, like Trevor Lawrence could, I hope it doesn't happen, he could get injured in week 1 and the Jags are completely toast, and all of a sudden the Browns have, the number 2 pick, and it's just like, and it doesn't. I mean, that's a good dice roll. I just like you have the chance to take the best player in the draft, and you're not picking at 1. And whether that's Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, whatever you view it as, like if you look at your board and you have a chance to get the best guy in the draft and you're not picking at 1, I have a hard time not picking that guy, especially when you're at a place where the Browns are at, right? It's not like they are coming off a 13-4 season and they're like, man, we just need a DT. If we just had an interior pass rush, we're right there. It's like they're just searching right now. They're like Myles Garrett holding them ransom. They don't have a quarterback. They don't know what's going on with Nick Chubb and his recovery. Like they're just in this state of limbo, and I would just rather have a true blue chip player than a couple extra picks in a dice roll.
You essentially traded in, to use like a lottery analogy, you traded in a win in like the Illinois lottery. You got like, good solid jackpot for $100,000 Powerball tickets is essentially what you did, because you had this surefire thing in your hand and then you cashed it in for, I don't know if I'm out of bounds saying this. I don't think Mason Graham's going to be an elite defensive tackle. And I think that that has to be the grading point then, because you're giving up that opportunity to have a guy who I do think is going to be an elite player, at least at one of the 2 positions that he plays. If you're going to make that kind of a gamble, you better make damn well sure you're getting an elite player, instead of that. And I look at a guy like Mason Graham, and it just every single part of his game to me just screams solid. Like that's about the ceiling that you're going to get. I do not think he's going to be the best defensive tackle in the NFL. And you just gave up that once in a lifetime shot at a guy like Travis Hunter. So you literally watched the team after you, the Giants, go out and grab Abdul Carter after that. And I'm like, well, there goes the other, potential generational type talent that's going to be in this draft. Obviously Ashton Genty, it wouldn't have been the, greatest thing for the Browns to go and get him, but ultimately you had an opportunity at one of two of like the two best players in this draft. You had the chance to pick either one of them and you didn't. I think that the return on the trade was fine. The 2026 first is really solid pick to have. It's great for them. I just, you don't get opportunities like that to draft a guy like Travis Hunter very often. And I think it's hard to put a value on that.
Right. And I think, to James's point also just about Mason Graham being like a pretty solid player, when you're drafting in the top 5, the top 6, the top 10, and you're passing on players, like what you're really looking for is you're looking to, unless you're the Eagles, right, and your roster is built and you can take whoever, but what you're really looking for is you're looking to take a player at a premium position who is basically like a $40 million player. You're getting at $10 million, right? That's the whole point of a rookie contract at tackle, at defensive end, at corner, at receiver, and at quarterback. So you're taking Mason Graham. You're telling me he better be Christian Wilkins, right? You are telling me that you want a $40 million player at $10 million for 4 years. If he's not Christian Wilkins, then you really whiff, because you're not getting Abdul Carter at that discount. You're not getting Travis Hunter at that discount. That's the whole point, right? That's how you can and should look at it, especially in the top 10.
All right, we're 16 minutes into this podcast, and we can't waste any more time. We got to get into what people are here for and what they've known us for the most part.
We're talking about the Falcons. We're talking about the Falcons?
Definitely got to get to the Falcons. But listen, we got to get to the Bears. And this is going to be an interesting little discussion. The Bears brought in Colston Loveland from the Michigan Wolverines. There was a lot of discussion as far as people, draft prognosticators, talking about Ty Warren from the Penn State Nittany Lions. It's funny, last time I saw James, the question he asked me was, a lot of people are talking about Ty Warren. What do you think about Colston Loveland? Because James is a Colston Loveland guy. I am a Ty Warren guy. A lot of people were saying that a lot of people have, as far as, I don't want to say traditional with Colston Loveland, because he's much more of a pass catching tight end with the ability to block. And I mean that as a positive, because sometimes you could say that the Bears may have someone who's quote unquote traditional in a Cole Kmet. It's particularly traditional if we're talking like 20 years ago, compared to when pass catching tight ends became more in vogue in the mid to late 90s than what you have now. But you sat there and just, you had Ty Warren, a guy who's kind of more a bull in a china shop. And then you have Colston Loveland, who's viewed much more of a technician and probably a consistent catch radius as far as catching the ball away from the body. Me personally, and it's funny just looking at my text thread with the disappointment that some people have with Ben Johnson, and me like, well, right now I have to give Tony Gill with the side. I said he had to get a side eye to Ben Johnson because he just doesn't know. For me, and this is one of those things that's funny, and please, both of you get on me. I look at it as far as, Ben Johnson should definitely bring in someone he's familiar with. We know Sam Laporta out of Iowa, the type of player that he was for the Detroit Lions and how easy it was for him to use. And if you know that this player in Colston is similar to him and you can use him, you should definitely do that. I would hope he's a visionary and he could sit there and say, listen, I can get this Gronk-esque guy and I could also do this to him. Now, look, he gets paid a lot of money. I get paid nothing. So he definitely went with who he should probably go. Like, this isn't one of those situations. I saw some Bears fans that were at Soldier Field were upset. I don't think you should be upset with the Bears taking Colston Loveland. I mean, once you got to the fact that Will Campbell and Banks were gone, if you're talking about the Bears taking the left tackle, once Banks was gone, and look, I know me and Josh have kind of went back on Banks or whatever, but once Banks was gone, when you're talking about top first-round value on left tackle, it was out the building. Ashton Gentry was gone. So the tight ends were probably, when you're talking about Ben Johnson trying to break in something to help Caleb Williams open up the offense, to also probably not have to, I have to get a third receiver that has to hit. Now you have a situation where your receivers are kind of set in a more reasonable fashion with 1 and 2. And yes, when you look at Rome, he's going to be the 2, but it may be a situation where he's kind of the 3 with where, depending on the game, where Colston's going to do, and this is, of course, if Colston's playing well and healthy, what Colston's going to do, or what the scheme may be going against the defense that you're going against. That's what I like about it. It opens it up where there's a lot more versatility in the offense. But your thoughts, let's kick it off with you, Josh, with the Bears, one, not getting a tackle if it seems like they were going to get a tackle, and then not going with Warren and going with Colston Loveland over Warren.
Yeah, we'll start with the tackle thing. I would have tried to trade up for a tackle because I think where the Bears find themselves now is kind of where they found themselves after the first round of the Darnell Wright draft when they didn't have that second round pick and they needed a defensive end, and they were like, wow, there's not going to be any defensive end by the time we pick again. And you look at the available tackles now, there ain't no available tackles, right? They all gone. Josh Connerly back into the first round, Simmons back into the first round. So you've kind of, once again, handcuffed yourself to Braxton Jones in this hope for, one, that he's completely healthy and that he can stay healthy, and that this new staff can get more out of him than Chris Morgan and Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy and Shane Waldron and the cadre of coaches that he's had. But once they decide not to do that, I don't think Warren versus Loveland, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think it's just a flavor answer, right? I think you're getting a guy in Colston Loveland who is a wide receiver in a tight end's body, who's a capable inline blocker, right? He's 21. He's got a slight frame. He's got to fill that out. Great route runner, really good in the middle of the field, seams, comebacks, crosses, all that stuff, right? That's going to help Caleb Williams out a lot to get someone who can really operate in the middle of the field. The kind of weapon that we kind of assumed Gerald Everett / Keenan Allen would kind of be, and that never really materialized. That's what he can be. I think the thing with Colston Loveland is the yak is just, it's pretty non-existent, right? It's a 6.8 missed tackle rate, which is almost subterranean. Like, he forced 3 missed tackles. Very good route runner, very fast, creates separation, absolutely making no one miss, right? And Tyler Warren had, I think it was a 22% broken / missed tackle rate, right? That it's Brock Bowers and it's Tyler Warren who do that, right? So it's what do you want? Do you want the guy who's a lateral blocker like Tyler Warren in his own scheme, who was kind of iffy when doing power duo stuff, got pushed around a little bit, but is bigger, right? He's 6'5", he's 260, he can get stronger. His arms can't get longer. He's got 31 3/4 arms. That might be an issue. But you're going to ask Colston Loveland to get bigger and take away his speed. Like, what's the plan, right? I think the Sam Laporta stuff is true, and it's interesting. It's a lofty comp. Sam Laporta's freaking awesome. But if Ben Johnson's sitting there and saying, okay, yeah, Colston, I can split you out by yourself, get a read off the defense, and then we can inform the offense based on that, and we can do similar things, I'm totally fine with that. What I'm really fine with is giving the coach you paid $13 million kind of carte blanche, right? Like, why don't you go pick who you want? We're going to meet all these guys, and if we like Tyler Warren, great. And if you really want Colston Loveland, awesome. That's what we're paying you for, because you're the one who's got to develop Caleb Williams, so you might as well give him what he wants instead of Matt Eberflus continually banging the table for a 3 technique and a left tackle and get none of it, right? So let's actually get the coach what he wants and see if it works.
I think your critiques of Loveland are well-founded, Josh, and I think that a lot of folks, should pay attention to that. What I don't want to hear is pushback against specific, just general numbers, right? Like the catches, the receiving yards. Like, they're going to look at that. You're going to look at what Tyler Warren put up and be like, oh my God, Tyler Warren was like this superhuman guy. And granted, you saw him in the college football playoff, and you saw him in games like the USC game just make these just completely bonkers contested catches, and just a freak athlete. And you can tell he played basketball. And I know that's always like a thing with tight ends, but you look at a guy like Colston Loveland and you look at the stats and it's like, yeah, 56 catches, 582 receiving yards. Like, those are really solid numbers. And then you remember the noodle-armed losers who were throwing to him at Michigan. And I wanted to ask Ken this question, as soon as they took Colston Loveland, because it immediately came to me. You look at his numbers, you look at Tyler Warren's numbers. I want to know from you, Ken, with your boy Drew Aller at Penn State, if he had been throwing Colston Loveland the football, I want to know what you think those statistics would have ultimately looked like, because seeing Colston play in games like the Rose Bowl against Alabama, seeing him catch his first career touchdown, I believe it was against Ohio State, and then just the way that he was used in all of these different kinds of schemes and the way that he presents matchup issues because of that speed and the 6'6" frame. I look at him and I'm really happy with either one of those tight ends, but I really would have loved to have seen the numbers Colston Loveland could have put up if he had played with Drew Aller and not the cast of wackos that he played with his last season in Michigan.
So look, one, anybody not playing at Michigan this year would have done better at Penn State with what Penn State had this season. Like, just because the comp was if we went back the year before Drew Aller was unleashed, basically. So I to me, and I'll go with you on this, James. Don't bring to me Colston Loveland's stats from last season, and also being dinged up too. Don't bring me those stats because JJ McCarthy was gone. But also, this is another thing too. In some ways, compared to just last year, JJ wasn't allowed to let it rip sometimes like Drew was. And they have pulled Drew back. They let Drew go last season. To answer your question, if we switch them out and if you put James, if you put Colston with the Nittany Lions, I think they both would have fed in different ways. But I will say this, I think still to the lack of talent that the Nittany Lions had, and I know you brought in a better offensive coordinator last year. I think they had to take advantage of the things that Ty Warren can do outside of just pass catching, when you could have him at running back and H-back and at quarterback. And I think that opened up more things because there were some blips with Drew Aller where he didn't really have, I won't say he may have had a subpar game, but he had games where he didn't. A rising tide rises all ships. He was not that tide some games that rose the ships that they needed for them to advance. And some of that, of course, is on James Franklin. A lot of it you could say is on James Franklin. But I think, to get to your question, I think Colston would have had a terrific year at Penn State. I don't know if he would have been as good as Ty Warren, because I think they may have needed the attributes that Ty Warren brings compared to what Colston brings with being more of a pure pass catch. And I don't want to just sit on that, because even though he's not like Dallas Clark was with the Colts 25 years ago, like just a guy where it's just like you really are just you're really just a wide receiver. You're not really a tight end whatsoever. I can see that in some years from now, and he may not ever be where you're asking him to be pure inline blocking, but I can see Colston being strong enough to maintain at the line where you need sometimes when you're out there in 12. Again, I'm not upset. This is a question I have for both of you though. We talked about the tackles being gone, and Josh, you said that they should have moved up to get a tackle. With the players that remained on the board at 10, if there was another player outside of the two tight ends that you think the Bears should have went over at 10, James, let's start off with you. Was there anybody that you wanted the Bears to get outside of the tight ends at 10?
I was definitely intrigued if they had wanted to go get Jalen Walker. I know that, Josh, you had brought up, I think it was maybe a little bit of lack of size with him when we were kind of talking about it. Sorry. It was both of you guys. All right. It was both of you guys. I still think that it would have been an upgrade to their pass rush. And I definitely think that with all of the emphasis that they have put on improving in the trenches this offseason, you've seen all the investment they've made in offensive line. They have made several moves on the defensive line as well. I wonder if maybe adding that type of a versatile piece and giving Dennis Allen kind of that guy to kind of work with a little bit. I was honestly curious if maybe a guy like him would have been a good play there just to kind of get that additional pass rush punch. And I did also look a little bit, I think it was Ole Miss's Walter Nolan. I thought that maybe that would have been another intriguing guy. I just kept looking at that defensive line as being like, look, you have now had those 3 offensive tackles go off the board. I think that a good plan B could have been to improve that defensive line just a little bit more through the draft and kind of get a guy you can mold with Dennis Allen at the helm of that defense. that was kind of the direction I was looking. And again, this is not a knock on them going tight end. I see the vision. Ken, or Josh, I think, said you're paying this guy $13 million to coach your offense. If he wants an offensive guy, let him have it. Maybe he could have improved the defense a little bit in that spot, given what was off the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, maybe you look at Michael Williams, but again, I think you're kind of at that 10 spot. Once the tackles are gone, you're kind of in a tough spot because of just the quality of the draft class, right? Like, it's really easy to sit here and say like they need a pass rusher because guess what? They need a pass rusher. But once Abdul Carter's off the board, right, it's such a big gap. It's like, who are you going to take at 10? Now you're moving down. Now you're trying to play this kind of guessing game of like, how far can I move down to get who I want? What if I move down too far and I don't get who I want? Now I'm really in no man's land, right? So you kind of get to a point. Tackles are gone. They obviously like Loveland. So look, I love it, and I think the point that James made about Loveland stats, like just throw that out. Like look at 2023, and what I would just say is over the past 2 years, Colston Loveland has the second most yards per route run in the entire country behind only Brock Bowers. That tells you how efficient he is, how explosive he is. He's a really, really, really good player. I was texting a scout who I know who's been doing this for a long time, and he just said, look, Colston Loveland is the second highest graded tight end I've scouted in my career by Brock Bowers. So really, really good player. If you wanted Tyler Warren, I'm not going to knock you. I really like Tyler Warren. I think he's incredible. I'm just very, very concerned now when you look at the Bears roster. The defensive line is very, very concerning. And like I said, I don't know what they could have done. We'll get into what they're going to do, what they're going to try to do. I think there's a guy from Arkansas who might be coming off the board pretty quickly tomorrow for them, who just screams Dennis Allen. But they've still got some holes to fix. But I think Colston Loveland's is a really good fit.
I do want to say, by the way, everybody wanted the Bears to beat the Packers in the last game of the season. If they hadn't, they would have picked a couple of spots higher. Maybe could have gotten a tackle. I don't know. Be careful what you wish for, guys.
Just imagine if Will Levis hadn't thrown them the game to start the season.
Oh, Mel Kiper going off on Will Levis today was really funny, where he's just like, I don't know if I'm wrong yet. I don't know if I'm wrong yet. That was one of my favorite moments of television.
Oh, my goodness. I want to get back to something that James mentioned. And one of the good things about having these discussions, because all of us kind of know a little bit of something, these guys are my insiders. But one of the things that we try to provide is scheme fit from kind of what you know from personnel. And one, this could go back to Ryan Poles. We know if you look at Montez Sweat, that Ryan Poles likes he likes big bodies in general. He's a big body guy, like everywhere. Yeah. So everywhere. It's not just at this position. He looks at bring me some giants. Basically, that's his preference. All right. But when you're talking about what you had with the Saints, right, and the type of players that they have out on the edge, you're talking about guys that are stout and can really set the edge in the run game and aren't just sack guys. Josh, we were having this discussion earlier or whatever, and that's kind of where with James we were kind of like, nah, because when you look at Walker being 6'1", and it's funny because, and now I'm gonna tell you, I'm being a homer on this part. But because last year I was like, yeah, bring me Chop Robinson again. I for some reason like Penn State players. I was like, bring me Chop Robinson. Or look, we were like, Josh and I, bring us Nolan Smith from Georgia, who's also undersized as far as being light. But when you're talking about playing the cover two that Eberflus played, and Eberflus didn't have the 3 technique that he needed, because if he had the 3 technique, you could have perhaps gotten away with having a guy out on the edge that was a little bit lighter, because offenses would have been imploding up front and would have had to focus, let alone with Montez Sweat on the other side. But now when you're talking about Dennis Allen and what he wants to do is where it didn't look like, and also the value. And I know some people will be mad. It was like, if you got a guy, you just go up and get him. You would be so mad if they drafted a player that didn't fit properly in their scheme. And I'll say this, devil's advocate is, you're going to make a play. You're going to find a way to make the player work. But if this player isn't conducive to how your defense works and it creates a problem up front in your defense, and you brought Dennis Allen in to basically be your defensive head coach, all right, like that's his side of the ball, you need to allow him to do what you already have. And you already have a player who underperformed last year, but it's the style of player that he desires in Montez Sweat. Now to go to who Josh is going to talk about in the second round, who fits the bill, basically, all right, as far as a player on defensive end that they would draft. But then, Josh, is something else that you mentioned that kind of bit me in the butt, and that's the left tackle situation. Because, and you knew the one you knew that Simmons probably was going to be a Chief, all right? Like, he already
had an apartment.
Right. He was like, we'll get into the second round, but before we jump out, because we're gonna finish with some more Bears talk, but I want to finish talking about the first round and anything else in the first round. Stupid, dope, something that stood out to you guys, a general manager that swung and hit, or general manager that swung and missed, that really stood out to you in the first night of the draft tonight, guys.
Oh, Terry Fontenot. Oh,
I knew that was
what are the Falcons doing? I mean on multiple levels, but Terry Fontenot is sitting there. He sees a trade up. He sees the price for the trade up. And a couple picks later, he's like, hold on. What if I do that, but I also give you a first round pick? For what? To go get James Pierce? A guy with character issues?
Mm-hmm.
What are you? I don't understand. What's the point? Like, you can't get rid of Kirk Cousins. You won't just give him away. You're asking teams to pick up $10, $20 million. No one's going to do that. Kirk Cousins can't move. You got a bum shoulder. He's angry. He doesn't want a young quarterback around him. And then you just gave up a next year's first, when you might not even be good this year, because we're not really sure how good Michael Penix is, to go get James Pierce. Does Terry Fontenot want to keep his job? I'm just very confused about what the Falcons are doing.
There were a couple of picks that kind of made me scratch my head. The Falcons certainly going back-to-back edge rushers. I was like, look, like I get it. You want to address a need, but I also feel like it was completely unnecessary to trade up again to do it a second time. The ones that really kind of made me question things were the Panthers taking T-Mac McMillan. I'm not the biggest fan of that pick. I thought that a guy like Matthew Golden or even Emeka Egbuka, I would have been totally good with the Panthers taking. I think Egbuka is kind of an underrated guy, and I've said it while he's been playing college, and eventually I'll finally acknowledge that I'm probably wrong about it, but I really like his skill set. I think he's a very solid wide receiver who is in the shadows of guys, at Ohio State, dudes like Marvin Harrison Jr. I thought he's really solid. But I also really thought Matthew Golden should have been the pick over McMillan. I'm not really sure what the Panthers are doing with that. And then I wasn't overly fond of the Bengals taking Shamar Stewart either. And I think that as I saw somebody mock the Bears Stewart at 10, I was like, I would quit this podcast before we even would have started if they had done that at number 10. I just don't see what everybody was like so gung-ho with him about. Like, he's one of those guys that I'm just like, that dude he doesn't have football instincts like at all, man. Like, you watch him play and I'm just like, what's he even doing out there? Everybody's like, look at all like those intangibles. And it's like, yeah, can he play football though? Like, big question that I have about it, man. I wasn't a big fan of that pick at all by the Bengals. I was like, you guys are, pretty much like, you're in this like area where you really have got to hit on your draft picks on the defensive side of things with how much money you've invested on offense. I just ain't doing it for me, man.
I love the fact that you said that, because he was either A or AB for me. Listen, the traits are through the roof when we're talking about the combine. But like, okay, the shirt off Olympics, he's the G. But when you're talking about, and you hit it, James, you're talking about the Bengals, your defensive end still wants out. All right. The check has not been signed yet, right? And that can, and your defense was bad with him leading the league in sacks last year. Mm-hmm. And this is a type of thing with Stewart. You do that if you have like the best defense and you're like, you know what? If we bring him in and fit him with these guys, they may be able to figure out how to get him to get what's on the paper on the field. That's the type of situation. It's a plus. It's a surplus when you bring in a guy who physically, if we're talking about on paper, is was the most gifted athlete in his draft, basically. If we're talking about perhaps on paper, when you talk about
they don't play football on paper, Ken.
They don't. But the Bengals do, evidently, James. So that to me, that was one. But this one for me, all right, and get on me if I'm wrong, but I have to go with Armand Membou, right? Is going to be, because you're talking about if there's a situation where, and again, maybe in the future, but you're talking about tackle versatility, and I'm gonna look. I know it's an athletic tackle, but if you're talking about a situation where I can get him and he can perhaps play left, let's even say if I'm set at left, but I'm like, this guy can play left, I'm with it. To take a right tackle at 7, no sirree, Bob, for me. All right, like that's just. Yeah, and I mean, we can look at the Bears, and we still have to figure out what's going to go on with Darnell Wright, but at least it wasn't 7. But I'm going to go with Membou because I don't feel like the Jets are down the line where you're just like, yeah, we're just one right tackle away. And I know they're figuring out their line, but one right tackle away from figuring this out. So I'll go with Membou as my AB to go with Stewart as my A.
Are there any guys that you absolutely looked at and were like, God, that is such like a home run pick? Then you were just stunned that they went to where they went? Because there's a couple of guys that I just see where they got drafted, and I'm like, God dang it, that's going to be such a pain in the ass for the Bears moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the first one, Ken knows I love Jahdae Barron. I think Jahdae Barron is a freaking stud, man. You can play him inside, outside. He can play a little bit of safety. He's an incredible blitzer, and you're gonna ask him to be CB2 opposite Pat Surtain. I mean, that is just really, really, really nasty work. And then James, I know we talked about this. I mean, Malachi Starks was legitimately born to be a Baltimore Raven. I mean, that's just Eric DeCosta just picking winning football players. It's like, okay, we'll just pair him with Kyle Hamilton, and we'll go about our business. Thank you very much.
I was going to say, of course, Jihad Campbell going to the Eagles. Yet another instance where teams are scared off by something, and the Eagles were like, well, if you insist, we're just going to go ahead. And I love that they even were like, you know what, we're going to trade up. We're going to give a 5th-round pick to the Chiefs just to go get that guy. They thought so little of giving, this team who almost won 3 straight Super Bowls just an extra pick. They were like, watch this. This is big baller energy right here. I do have to say, though, the pick before that, the Maxwell Hairston pick, but for the Bills, God, you want to talk about like they had a precise need and they went out and got a guy who just fit it so perfectly. Like every single scouting report I read about Hairston, I was just like, man, that guy, this corner class is not going to get talked about a lot, especially with Will Johnson dealing with the injury stuff that he is. But everything I read about Hairston just screamed that he's going to be a really strong NFL player. And the Bills were like, what's our biggest need? Cornerback. Well, let's go get that guy who, again, like is just going to, I think, be a really strong NFL player. I love that pick for the Bills.
And I mean, I commend the Bills too for making that pick there with Will Johnson still on the board, because I'm sure when they were maybe putting their board together, Will Johnson might have been at 10, 12 because he's a really good player, and they're sitting there, it's like, man, do we take Will Johnson or we just take the guy who we scouted really heavily, who played in a very similar defensive scheme, like it's off the ball, it's eyes forward, right? It's react, it's recover, and they just stick to our guns. We take a guy who we know fits. And he can replace Kyer Elam, who, as we learned in the playoffs, all respect to Kwame Brown, he can't play. And that's okay.
It'll be interesting to see where Will Johnson falls early tomorrow. James, for your question, I have a few characters. All right. I got Tyler Booker, Roll Tide, just because you look at with Dallas, Zach Martin, leaving, and we all thought, Ashton Gentry, we all thought, and another guy that I'll talk about in a second, maybe a wide receiver to go alongside CeeDee Lamb. But I thought them getting perhaps one of, if not the better, of course, value, because you're talking about a guard compared to a tackle. but one of the better offensive linemen for them, because it's never sexy, but if you fortify your trenches, it'll make the rest of the offense pop anyway. Like they can go in and get a good running back in this draft that will look a lot better because they have a better line in front of them than if they went and got, because they weren't going to get Ashton Gentry, everybody. So if they went and got a good running back, you didn't get the same. So also continue with the guys that I had to answer your question. I had a Marion Hampton because look at where he's going. You know what I'm saying? Like that, he's going. Listen, Harbaugh is going to wear him, and I mean this in a good way. And you look at how it's going to help Herbert. It's going to help the whole offense now that you have a battering ram with an offensive-minded head coach that likes to dominate physically. Like that is right. Round hole, round circle, drop. Just everything fits. And then again, I kind of mentioned this player, I hinted, Matthew Golden going to the Pack. You look at the fact that the Packers, who haven't got it, when Aaron Rodgers was fiending for a wide receiver in the first, and Murphy on his way out being like, hey, Aaron, I lasted longer than you, and guess what I just did right here on my way out. But when you look at, and somebody that the Bears fan, me being one of them at the time, opined for, and you look at what happened with what's the wide receiver from Dakota?
Christian Watson.
Thank you, Christian Watson. You look at the fact that Christian Watson hasn't been able to stay on the field, all right, and what they thought they were going to get out of Christian Watson. And at some point, it's not that Christian Watson can't come back and play and help you, but you can no longer wait on him because one, you have to really find out if Jordan Love is who you believe Jordan Love is. And and I mean that, I think we think Jordan Love is good, but if Jordan Love is special, and you can't do that because his next contract is not that far away, really, when you think about it. You can't do that if you're still waiting to get your guy to take the roof off the top of Christian Watson. So for them to go out and get Golden to kind of solidify the outside, the boundary, X guy to take the roof off, I like that for the Pack. So those will be my guys right there.
By the way, I do want to also commend the Minnesota Vikings. I thought Donovan Jackson was a really sneaky good pick. Like he slid to left tackle when Josh Simmons got hurt last year, and I really felt like he kind of helped that Ohio State line to continue to protect Will Howard, and I thought did a really solid job. So I love that versatility. They needed somebody obviously up the middle on the interior of that line, but it really helps to have a guy like that who has that experience shifting out to, left tackle in a pinch in a Big Ten conference that, as we saw last year during the playoff, there were some really talented players in that conference. So I do think that was another sneaky / annoying pick because it made the Vikings better.
No, I love the Jackson pick just because if you think about why did the Vikings lose in the playoffs, right? Why did the Rams just absolutely eat their lunch? Because they just got dismantled up front, especially on the interior, right? They get Ryan Kelly, they get Will Freeze. Now they're going to put Donovan Jackson at left guard. Like that's a pretty good offensive line if Darrisaw's healthy in front of JJ McCarthy, who all right, it's his keys now, right? And as we know, the best way to get a young quarterback to succeed is get the pressure off him. So I love that pick. And the Golden thing is interesting because you remember the talk all last year, all the Packers were like, other receivers were like, we don't have a one, right? We don't need a number one. We've got all these guys. It's like, no, you do need a one. We do need a one. Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, you guys are really nice pieces. Bo Melton's nice. Christian Watson went healthy, good. They need a guy, right? Jordan Love needs a go-to guy. He doesn't need a cadre of 2s and 3s and guys who can, pick our poison. Any game, it can be anyone. They just lack that go-to threat, right? It kind of became Tucker Kraft, but then that didn't really work, and you kind of saw the Eagles just kind of shut them down really easily in the playoffs. So I love the Golden pick. 4.29 speed. I'm a sucker for speed. Ryan Poles likes the big guys. I like the fast guys.
Davis.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, speed kills. You can't teach it.
Shedeur Sanders, guys. Shedeur is now going to be a second-round draft pick. Some people had him going in the second round. Some people had him evaluated going in the second round. I won't say I was surprised, but I did think he was going to be a first-rounder just because usually in the NFL there's a premium put on quarterbacks, even if
fifth year. Yeah,
that's what I keep saying so okay, this is a crazy thing for anybody when Josh is saying that, and we always talk about that. If you have a first round pick, you have the option for the 5th-year option. All right. And that allows you with your cap to sit there and everything that Josh opened up with when you're talking about having a premium player and you're underpaying him because of that rookie contract, you're allowed to do, and you're allowed to continue to do it one extra year because you have the 5th-year option. You're not in a situation which a lot of teams are, and it's not bad if you have a second round pick that pops, but you end up having to pay that player a year earlier than you would have liked to pay them, and it hinders your negotiation possibilities also with that player because of that situation, because you still have the 5th-year option, and then you can get into the situation with the franchise tag. So it's just and then you got to think about how much you have to pay with that franchise tag on the average of the players that have the top of that salary. But Shedeur Sanders slips into the second round. Jackson Dart, which some people had Jackson Dart jumping into the top 10 picks. But guys, thoughts on Shedeur slipping out of the first and Jackson Dart becoming a giant, and Brian Daboll, who had comped in Jackson Dart as being a Josh Allen-esque type, and perhaps what he did with Josh Allen being the former offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills before coming over with Sheen to the New York Giants.
Yeah, I'm not surprised Shedeur Sanders didn't get drafted today. I think when you talk to people around the league, like people who were like really, really in it, like most of them were like, no, I mean, we don't have a first round grade on him, maybe 25, but a lot of it, mostly second round grades. I think so much of the first round talk is just because the name and because it's a weak quarterback class, right? It's like, hey, we know Cam Ward's going 1. And history tells us quarterback needy teams are going to reach and they're going to come up and get someone. So it's going to be Sanders. And I think the Dart stuff makes a lot of sense for the Giants because you talk about the Josh Allen comp. What did Brian Daboll really fix with Josh Allen? It was the accuracy. It started with the feet. And if you watch Jackson Dart, when he gets a little happy feet, he's loose with it, right? And everything else is there. I like Jackson Dart as a prospect. Shedeur Sanders, there's no elite trait, right? And I think that's why you didn't see a team come up and trade up to 30 to get him, right, for that 5th-year option, because there's no game-breaking trait. There's nothing that you see on tape that is like, okay, we have to have the speed. He's an incredible athlete. He's super, super polished at X. It's like, yeah, he's good at everything, right? He's a good pocket passer. He's tough as hell. I mean, he gets the crap kicked out of him. He is tough as nails, but okay, I'll just wait for round 2. Like, he'll be we got the Browns, the Raiders, and the Saints coming up. He's probably going to go to one of those 3 teams. I'm not surprised. I think the interesting thing is that Joe Shane's teenage son tipped the Jackson Dart pit yesterday. So that's the most Giants thing that's ever happened since Hard Knocks last year.
Yep. Go ahead,
I'll
Ken.
push back. Let me push back because you hit on something right there. He's good. He's not great, but he's good. Basically, he's not a supreme athlete, but he's athletic. Like, he can get you a first down, right? Yep. It's not a situation. Usually, you're looking at a quarterback that's quote unquote athletic, and of course, the elephant in the room. He's a black quarterback, and athleticism is always thrown out there with black quarterbacks. But he plays from the pocket, but didn't have the chance. And James, we talked about this a lot, just talking, college football on Big Ten country. I mean, he's getting his ass kicked. Like one thing that Coach Prime has not solved is offensive linemen, really defensive linemen too, trenches in general. But he was getting, and Josh, you said it, he's tough. But we're in a league now that when we were younger, not even younger. When I don't mean younger like we were kids. This could be younger like 10 years ago, right? We were all still adults here, right? Where a quarterback who has an arm that's good enough for anticipatory throws, right, can stand in the pocket and execute from the pocket, there's a premium. You look at, at Brock with the 49ers, just as far as, again, I'm not saying he's going to be, I don't know, why am I blanking on the 49ers quarterback? Josh, what's the 49ers?
Brock Purdy?
Yeah, Brock Purdy. You look at Brock Purdy. Okay, case in point. Coming out of school right now, and I know Brock Purdy had even more games that he played like 11 years in college. But if you just look at it, it wouldn't. And I had to choose between the two. I would have, of course. And you look at where Brock Purdy was drafted, I would have taken Shedeur. And again, that's an apples to oranges comparison because where Brock Purdy was drafted, so it's not the same. But you look at the fact that Shedeur has shown that he can live within the limelight. He's played on a lesser level when you're talking about SWAC football, and where people thought he wouldn't be able to go to the big boys and play in a power conference. And look what he did with being an offensive player in his conference. So again, is there a situation? I guess I should ask this: is there a Dion situation in this? And also, I want to say this too, because I don't want to make this all excuses. Is there a situation because of Dion where if Shedeur was even better, let's just say physically his comp was closer to Cam Ward, where the juice was worth the squeeze, that you'd be like, you know what? I got to deal with perhaps one Dion talking about, because this about if it goes bad, Dion is going to be talking crazy about your coach and your organization in 2 years, for real. Because I mean, to some degree, he damn near has to try to save the next place that Shedeur is going to land to make sure he gets an opportunity. You know, I'm just going to let my son falter all the way. I mean, particularly if it's not just all on him. But do you think that kind of knocked him out also, the fact of having a famous father who is going to be vocal on what's taking place if he doesn't feel like the team is putting necessarily the right pieces around his son, and also building his son up to perhaps go and take the next step for the NFL?
I was just literally going to say my immediate reaction to that is, you know, are teams afraid if they quote unquote reached for Shedeur and he failed? Would they be afraid to be accused of, like, you know, succumbing to that kind of pressure of being like, you know, oh, we didn't want to, you know, incur the wrath of Dion or, you know, whatever, and like make him mad by taking his kid later on? Like, I'm wondering if maybe that kind of psychology played into it a little bit too, where they're like, we can't afford to be seen as reaching on him and then him failing at it. Like, I'm wondering if maybe that was part of the calculus too.
I like that, James.
I kind of go the other way with the Dion stuff, where I think I wonder if there's a certain group of teams that maybe they're interested in Shedeur, but they are coaches and regimes who are on unstable footing, and you take Shedeur and things go sideways, and all of a sudden it's like, well, why don't you just get Dion to come coach? And it's like, well, I don't want to deal if you're, oh, I don't know. I mean, Kevin Stefanski's won Coach of the Year twice, so maybe that's not a good. But if you're Brian Daboll, right? You're Brian Daboll.
Say Brian Daboll.
Yeah, if you're Brian Daboll and you're like, man, I need to draft a quarterback. I need to show I can develop the quarterback. I need to win some games, or else I'm going to be updating the resume. I absolutely do not want to be answering questions about whatever Deion Sanders said in his week conference before the Baylor game about how I suck and my offense is bad. Now he wants my job. I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to take Jackson Dart. I'll get the weird eye black, and he'll sit behind Russ, and Mr. Unlimited and him can chat with Jameis, and we'll be just fine. I think that's why the Steelers were seen as an appealing destination, because Mike Tomlin, that's not going to bother Mike Tomlin.
No.
You can say whatever you want. Like, Mike Tomlin, he's never going to get fired. Like, Mike Tomlin will leave that job. So that's not going to bother him. So I wonder, Brown, Stefanski, maybe Pete Carroll, obviously the Raiders, that's not going to be an issue. But like Kellen Moore with the Saints, right? First time head coach, bad roster. Like, are you really going to go out on a limb, draft Shedeur Sanders, and then have to deal with all that while you're trying to be a first time coach with the roster that's being reshaped? Probably not. Like, that juice is not worth the squeeze.
I was actually going to say that, Josh, that I think that there's still that possibility that Sanders ends up with the Steelers. And I know the Browns have I think it's 2 picks in the first 4 in the second round. Yep. Am I insane thinking they may take Jalen Milroe over Shedeur Sanders?
I mean, elite athleticism, elite arm. He could throw it a mile. I have no idea where it's going, but he could throw it a mile.
And he's fast. I love that he's got that speed element of his game too, and it kind of lets some of the other stuff maybe catch up to it a little bit. And I know that that's not an ideal circumstance for a quarterback, and we've seen it time and again where those guys crash and burn because they don't develop those other skills. But you are at a point in the draft where it's like you're not going to get a perfect quarterback candidate. So if I had my druthers and I were the Cleveland Browns, I'm probably leaning toward Jalen Milroe in that situation. And then again, let a team like the Steelers potentially take on Shedeur Sanders and to take on, that kind of burden while also potentially reaping those kinds of rewards.
Well, I love Jalen Milroe, all right, and I told him I wish him nothing but success. But
we know, roll tide, blah blah blah.
That part, I wasn't going to do that. I would think that right now where Jalen Milroe is, you're going to look to have certain packages for him, compared to with Shedeur. It's much more of a traditional offense. Not to say that either one would necessarily excel at this point, but I would think as far as the duration of the game, you're going to get a much more out of Shedeur because you're not going to let Jalen throw the ball all over the place right now where he's at. It's going to take probably 3 years to really, and that's with playing him at least by year 2, letting him really throw the ball around by year 2. I can understand year 1, you kind of have packages. Then year 2, you kind of have them out there. Then year 3, hey, all right, we're going to throw you out there. So again, when we're talking about teams on shaky ground, but then again, as Josh said, with Mike Tomlin, it's not necessarily the same. I do want to say this before we move off and end with some Bears discussion. There's not a chance in hell the Mara family was going to let Deion Sanders become the head coach of the New York City Giants.
No,
if you know the history of the Giants, there's not a chance.
No freaking way.
Mm-hmm.
You're lucky that Russell Wilson and Jameis are even in the building. All right. If you're talking about black quarterbacks with the Giants, let alone Deion said, and I'll remind you, I'm a primetime guy. But boy, listen, we will really be coming some places in this country if the Giants bring in primetime to be the head coach. Anything before we go to the Bears and close out the show for the second round that you guys want to discuss as far as the first round, guys?
Nope.
All right.
I think we're good. Yeah.
All right. So now this is the good part. And guys, everybody here, we will be back on 3 Men in a Pod, perhaps at the end of the weekend. We're not coming back tomorrow night. We will come back at the end of the weekend and close out and talk about what happened. Also, we want to talk a little bit about some Bears stuff that's taking place since you've heard from us last. I definitely want to get these guys' thoughts on some Bears stuff. Particularly because somebody said that Ben Johnson was definitely not going to end up here and just poo-pooed and disrespected me so hardcore. Like, it's never going to happen. And so we definitely have to bring this here. But look, let's go right into it, Josh. Your guy, the Bears right now, they still need a left tackle. As you said, they may go into this with the hopes that perhaps Braxton Jones with the new regime can go to another level with this new regime. You still have Corinne, I don't want to butcher his last name, Agamendaji.
Amagaji, yep.
Amagaji, thank you. Corinne Amagaji. With talent, but we don't know what he could be. But that's asking a lot. We're grown here. Like, that's asking a lot for him. We're not kids. We'd be like, we hope. Like, that's asking a lot. And you're in a situation now where the premium left tackles are really gone. I had a guy that I've been liking for a year, and that's Ariante Ursi from Minnesota, the Gophers.
Yeah.
I think him and maybe Charles Grant from William and Mary will be guys that I would take. But I think Ursi is really the only guy as far as in the second round I'd be willing for the Bears to go out. So is there anybody as far as tackles, James and Josh, that you can see the Bears going off before we go into these other positions to close out the show?
No, he's the only one for me. I think if you get past Irsay, it's kind of like in Amagaji land where you're like, we're taking a guy and we hope that we kind of strike, right? We hope we can develop him, but I mean, the Bears need people who can play and make an impact next year. So it's not a similar situation with Karan where, he sits for a while and then they have to throw him in there and it's just like, oh man, this is not how it should be.
I'm with you guys, and I think that if you don't feel comfortable with that, I do think there are a few maybe intriguing guys at positions like edge rusher that I could see them maybe going after in the second round, but I'm totally with you guys on that. And I unfortunately did not watch a ton of William and Mary games, so I can't speak with any authority on that.
No, James, I know with the TVs that you have in the garage, you got some William and Mary games in this past off.
I may have snuck one or two in, but I'm not that level of depraved just yet. But it's young. We'll see how this podcast evolves. Maybe I'll have to upgrade my setup.
Josh, who do you have the Bears getting that edge rusher? You've hinted, you've teased, and it looks like I'm saying your guy you hit with looks like the perfect guy for this scheme.
It's Landon Jackson, right? Arkansas. He's 6'6". He's 264, 40.5-inch vertical. The pass rush production, right, isn't there, but he's a great edge setter. He's probably the best run defending edge, maybe in the class. Like he's really, really good at setting the edge. And that's kind of what they need, right? They got rid of DeMarcus Walker. They just don't. Austin Booker was kind of, he was kind of what we expected, right? It was kind of like, a couple flashes, kind of flat. I think Landon Jackson really fits what Dennis Allen wants, and right, he's a big guy. He's not undersized. Like he's a Poles guy. He's a Dennis Allen guy from a traits standpoint. And you're kind of thinking, okay, if this guy can set the edge, and we can, move Montez Sweat around, and the offensive line's not going to be focused on Landon Jackson as it was when teams were playing Arkansas. Maybe we can get more pass rush production out of him with better coaching and better talent around him. So I think Landon Jackson, I mean, he just smells like a bear.
Josh, do you have any sort of would you consider JT Tuimoloau as an option in that spot? I know Ken knew I was going to ask about him because I've always been. I have banged the drum for him quite a bit over his career at Ohio State, but I don't know, man. There's just something about him that's really intriguing, and it's not like he's undersized. He is 6'5", so he is a decent sized guy. I though do not have the level of authority on schematically the way he would fit in with a Dennis Allen defense, and so I'm kind of leaning on you for that one. But just based on what he did at Ohio State and what he put on tape, I'd be very intrigued with that guy as one of your second round picks. What about you?
Yeah, there's no question. I think with JTT, you got size, you got speed, you got the strength, you got the power. And I mean, the production's there. I always kind of like to lean in favor of taking guys who are very productive at very big programs who kind of shine in the spotlight. From a size, from a traits perspective, he fits. So I wouldn't hate that at all. I mean, I think Landon Jackson, JTT, maybe Jordan. So those are kind of guys who kind of fit the mold.
I think what we're going to end up having to do, I think at least once or twice per episode, is I'm going to have to ask Josh a question with the preface, am I insane? And we're going to just kind of make it like an each podcast thing. And Ken, I would ask you, but you tend to be really nice to me, man. I want Josh to, really kind of course correct.
I'll tell you you're insane. I'll tell you you're insane, James. I got you. I got you.
Am I insane for wanting JT Tuimoloau out?
No, he was no. Actually, James, he is second on my list. Right.
Okay.
So you preference this properly. Josh won, and we can't. He's slightly taller than what we've beat up James for, but Mike Green from Marshall is 6'3". All right. What about him? Just let me give you the list before you, and then you can poo-poo it. Savion Jones is 6'5", right? A power guy. And sticking with big program guy to go with JTT, Jack Sawyer. And again, this doesn't, they still have 1 3rd-round pick. So this doesn't have to be, it's still day 2, but it could be a situation where, hey, I don't know, they get Will Johnson and say, let's get a cornerback, right? And then we get a running back, and we got to do running back. I guess we'll get out of here on running backs. But what about the edge rushers? And they don't have to be, even if somebody, Josh, you could see in round 4, but are there any other edge rushers who you could see perhaps either fitting this scheme to a hilt or factoring in close enough to be able to set the edge, but they can perhaps pressure the quarterback so well that they will allow them to grow into a player that can perhaps set the edge better as the time moves on?
Yeah. I mean, I think Jack Sawyer maybe in the 3rd, 4th round. I don't know when he's going to go. I mean, he's a good edge setter. I just don't know what kind of pass rush production you're going to get out of him because he never really kind of lived up to that next Nick Bosa kind of speed off the edge with the power. So if you're looking for a guy who can be rotational, maybe, but I really think it's the three guys. I think it's Landon Jackson. I think it's JTT. I think it's Jordan Birch. Got to get one of those guys. I like the idea of taking Will Johnson if he falls to them. I really do. I think if the medicals are okay, I would take a gamble on talent, and then you don't have to kind of be all in on this idea that Tyree Stevenson is going to both elevate his game on the field, but also like continue to mature on the field. So I would like that, and then we'll get to running back, which I think is someplace they're going to go tomorrow.
Where are you at on Terrell Smith? That was your guy, and with you look at Tyreek not taking the next step, where do you think they're at, and do you still think that do you think that he's still an option in house to perhaps supplant Tyreek if Tyreek can't get the focus down from down like they need him to do, playing opposite Jalen Johnson? Josh, you're muted.
Got me?
We can do now, yep.
Yeah, sorry. No, I think the issue with Terrell is with everyone, it's just a new staff, right? I think if it was kind of a similar staff, then I could be able to tell you, Terrell Smith is I still think that the ball skills are there, the coverage skills are there. It just kind of depends on if Dennis Allen and co see him as a scheme fit, which I think is why I'd be open to taking another corner that this staff likes and can bank on opposite Jalen Johnson. But I think Terrell Smith is still a very valuable option, a very good depth piece. I mean, he's played tremendous in spot duty in 2 years. So I think he's still an option for sure.
I do like having that insurance policy if you end up drafting Will Johnson, having those guys around too. Like, I think that the potential is like you have this, like, it is high risk, but it also could be high reward. And again, we're not privy to all of Will Johnson's medicals. Like, there is probably a dang good reason he dropped out of the first round. Ken, you and I watched him a lot at Michigan. We were very impressed with what we saw. We know what he can do if the health is going to be there. That's a potential top 10, 15 player in this class. Like, it just is a matter of like whether or not you trust the medical enough to be able to say, look, we think we can get him healthy and productive. So I love that as a potential, like, real roll of the dice if they want to do that.
I'm gonna stick with my man James, with the player near and dear to his heart, from a school from the same as far as near and dear, and that's Cam Scatterboo. As we exit out on running backs, Josh, your running back hierarchy, do you think, for instance, there's been a lot of hype about this being a draft that is strong on running back. Do you think the Bears should use one of the 2 second-round picks, or perhaps wait to the 3rd round to perhaps go after the running back? What do you think the Bears should do, and what players do you think should fit the scheme? Should the Bears go for, when you look at Devontae Swift being a lightning / speed guy, should they say, regardless, stick with another speed guy because Swift probably isn't here for the long term, or should they do a thunder and lightning similar to David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs and look for a guy that's kind of more of a battering ram? You look at the 2 running backs out of Ohio State, where the speed guy, of course, being Trayvon Henderson, and then Quayshawn Judkins being the thunder guy. Which way would you lean in that way? And then what's your ranking with the running backs, and when do you think, with the Bears' second-day picks, they should perhaps look to get one off the board, if anyone, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who's still on the board when they pick in round 2. Like, if Travion Henderson is still there, I would just take Travion Henderson. I think you're getting a guy with James Cook talent, like that kind of potential, a guy who can, be a nice piece in year 1 and then be like a star maybe year 2, year 3. And, I like guys like Cam Scatterboo. I like Caleb Johnson. I'm pretty big on Dylan Sampson, but I mean, Trayvon Henderson's just different, right? The pass catching ability, the electricity, the breakaway speed, the missed tackle rate, that kind of stuff. And I think him and Ben Johnson's offense would be incredible. So, I mean, if he's still on the board when the Bears, come up to pick here, and they got 6, 7 picks, I would take Trayvon Henderson. And if he's gone, then you kind of reevaluate, right? I think coming into the draft, the thought was, okay, they need a tackle. They need a defensive end. They need a tight end and a running back. We've already touched on the tackles. It's just probably not going to happen, right? So you kind of like have to reorganize your priorities. And now you're just kind of looking at like, okay, how do we feel about Quinshon Judkins? I'm not really that high on him, but okay, maybe like I'd rather go with Cam Scadaboo in round 3 or Caleb Johnson, who I really like I said. So for me right now, it's Trayvon Henderson, a little bit of a gap. And then I go with Caleb Johnson, Cam Scadaboo, and Dylan Sampson. So I would go with those guys. And like I said, I would take Henderson if he's on the board when they go up to pick here at, what is it, 39? What is it? Was that when they picked 39?
39 and 41. Yep.
39 and 41. Yeah. So if he's there, I'd take him. And if not, then honestly, I would kind of go best player because like I wouldn't reach for a tackle. And I think the Bears have done a pretty nice job in the offseason. They've revamped the interior of the offensive line. Like I like a guy like Tate Ratledge in round 3 out of Georgia. You kind of solidify guard behind Jonah Jackson, right, who's had some injury issues. So they've got options. So if it's not Henderson or Will Johnson, I just go best player.
I will agree with Josh where I'd say I would take Trevion Henderson if he's there in the second round. I feel like that is, as he said, you have that potential. He could be the second best running back in this draft. I think that Ashton Genty, like it's hard to envision a scenario where Henderson would like jump above him, for example, but there's a lot to love about his game. You saw him repeatedly show up at big moments for Ohio State. And I feel like there is something to be said for a guy who had that kind of talent on a team that had so much talent at like the wide receiver position, for example. He almost was like too unheralded in a way, but I really loved his game. But I will say, as Ken alluded to, I am a massive like Sun Devil guy. Like I'm always going to have the soft spot in my heart for Cam Scadaboo, and it forks up, baby. My God, I was so fired up last season. And I really thought they were going to get to the college football playoff semifinal. It was just completely bonkers. Anyway, so Cam Scadaboo, if the Bears want to guarantee at least one jersey sale this offseason, if they draft Cam Scadaboo, I will absolutely be buying that jersey. I love his demeanor, his attitude. Like I know that intangibles definitely go into the draft process. You want high character guys. Cam Scadaboo he's a character. Fans would love him in Chicago. And I love how difficult he is just to bring down, how athletic he is, how versatile he is. He can do all sorts of crazy things. You saw that in the game against Texas. You just can use him in a lot of different ways. I feel like Ben Johnson would look at a guy like him and go, I could use a guy like that. Very, very much that kind of vibe where it's like kind of game for anything. So if push comes to shove, they don't take a running back in the second round and Scadaboo's floating around there in the third round, why not pull the trigger on a deal like that? I think that'd be a really solid pick.
Definitely left everything out on the field. Just type of player that throw old school needs like one of those breakaway jerseys. Like I need Cam Scadaboo to break out of a tackle and the jersey rip off, and he just keeps running down the field. Look, we're going to be back in a couple days to wrap up the draft, to say everything about the Bears won, and also get into some of the stuff that happened with the other teams. Also, the NFC North. We will cap the NFC North as far as the Bears rivals and what they did, and grade who we thought did the best and who we think also did the worst. Of course, Claire Flipley is running this podcast. We also will live stream. All right. So we're going to live stream. So bring your questions. But between then, put your questions in your comments. Let us know your thoughts. All right. And is there anything else you want us to talk about? So make sure you ask the questions. My guys are here. Definitely going to answer them. We're here. 3 Men in the Pod. Our new podcast, just starting off, is going to get even crazy. If you've watched us, this is going to start getting crazy. Like we're calm right now. We're not even lathered up, but the lathering is coming. I bet you by the next show, we will be lathered up. I want to say, of course, thanks to these two gentlemen and Claire, and also anybody paying attention and listen. Also, again, we're not going to go back in the days, but anybody that's always been supporting us, come over here and support us because we always appreciate it. Guys, anything else before we get up out of here?
No, man, it's been fun. Excited to get going.
I'm going to force you guys to talk about some baseball. That'll happen at some point this year.
Yeah, I will be on PTO.
Sorry, no PTO. Boss is strict.
Ooh. I love having the boss on my side. That's nice.
Did you hear the voice? We're not recording, but this. Oh, we are the voice of the boss. Perhaps we can get her to come on to the show. All right. Perhaps that's what we need. We could get some gymnastics up in here. But again, 3 men in a pod. Hope you like the name. All right. Because we podding in with 3 men. But also just I don't curse. Just fuck with us. All right. Just come. All right. It's gonna be great. I always appreciate everybody. We will see you in a couple days breaking down more of this year's NFL draft.